In 2020, Klaus Schwab spoke about a great reset. In 2016, an article by Danish politician Ida Auken was published on the World Economic Forum's website, stating that you will own nothing and be happy. And now we are seeing a great reset approaching us, a financial upheaval that will affect all of us in different ways. And I am convinced that there will be winners and losers, and you definitely want to be on the right side. And if you look closely at what is happening behind the scenes right now, you'll realize that this reset is inevitable. The financial system is overloaded with debt. The US government, which in many ways represents the global engine of the economy, plays a central role in this. And right now, there are efforts in the US to strengthen nationalism, bring production back home, and push back against this globalist agenda that has weakened the middle class in many countries for years, and continues to do so in many places. We are witnessing live how the course is being set for this great reset, while many people have no idea what is coming their way. They don't understand how our debt-based monetary system is slowly but surely draining value from their lives. And of course, some people are profiting from the inflation we're currently seeing. And who would have thought 5 years ago that house prices would explode like this? And people who invested in assets like real estate, which have been massively inflated financially over the past 50 years, could never have imagined that the price of their properties would rise so far above their actual utility value. And I don't want to badmouth real estate now, but it's a central issue because some have put their entire wealth into their own home or into investment properties. And there are political decisions that were made many years ago which paved the way for real estate to become financially inflated as an asset, and today, for many, it has essentially become our main store of value. But this is now on the verge of a turning point, and I want to explain to you why that is. In the past, real estate had a utility value, and its price reflected that value. Today, the price of real estate often has little to do with its actual value, because if you look at all the costs involved in buying property, the inflated premiums, the debts taken on for it, you realize that we are dealing with a bubble. And it doesn't take much for this bubble to burst. And this is where Bitcoin comes into play, this digital equivalent to real estate, which is getting more and more attention. And people are starting to understand that, for various reasons, it is a much stronger asset, digital property. And I'll get into that in a moment. But let's stick with real estate for a moment. There was a time when its price reflected its utility, and that changed in 1971 when President Nixon took the US off the gold standard.
The third indispensable element in building new wealth is closely linked to the creation of new jobs and curbing inflation. We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability worldwide. In the past 7 years, there has been on average an international currency crisis every year. So, who benefits from these crises? Not the worker, not the investor, not the real producers of wealth. The winners are the international money speculators. Because they profit from crises, they help to create them. In recent weeks, the speculators have waged a full-scale war against the American dollar. The strength of a country's currency is based on the strength of that country's economy, and the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the necessary measures to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have instructed Secretary Connolly to temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and under conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
And since then, everything has changed in every area. And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. You need to know that the world economy has been relying on a fragile system for decades. In the past, money was backed by gold, something tangible, something real. But ever since the gold standard was abandoned, a lot has changed, and not for the better. Today, our money, so-called fiat currency, is based on nothing but trust. Trust in governments and in central banks. But what happens when that trust starts to crumble? And that's exactly where we are right now. Much of what we consider a store of value has flowed into real estate and stocks. Why? Because politicians and banks have encouraged it. Cheap loans and so on. But there's a problem here. Our money is nothing but debt. Banks create loans out of thin air, and these debts, for example, continue to drive up real estate prices worldwide, as well as stock prices. But what happens when this debt carousel stops working? And many believe that we are now at the end of a 50-year experiment. No fiat currency has ever survived permanently, and history shows this again and again. Trust in governments and central banks is fading because people see how the system keeps getting bailed out, while the middle class ends up footing the bill. Do you remember the financial crisis of 2008? Banks handed out toxic loans, made huge profits, and when everything collapsed, they were bailed out by the central bank. Quantitative easing, in other words, printing money, creating money out of thin air, came after that, and inflation hit the middle class the hardest. In 2020, the same thing happened all over again. The system is broken. Even experts like Ray Dalio, a smart investor, say so. And since 2008, the system has been on life support, propped up by ever-increasing debt. And this debt flows into real estate, stocks, bonds, everywhere, except into real stability. And this is where Bitcoin comes into play. Bitcoin is different. It makes you your own central bank. It is based on truth and unchangeable rules, with no rulers, no politicians who can simply bend those rules. There's a saying, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And when a few people have control over the system, the money, the system becomes corrupt. And we are seeing that now after 50 years of gradual decline, or we can also see it more and more in politics. And Bitcoin allows you to put your wealth, your energy, your life's work into a system that protects you, that protects your family. It's fascinating. Most people think their property will always increase in value, but that's an illusion. If you measure the value of your house in a hard currency like Bitcoin, the hardest money that has ever existed, you'll realize that this value is actually falling more and more, and rapidly so. Your house may seem to be increasing in price, but that's because you're measuring it in a currency that is being printed more and more. That is losing value. That is losing purchasing power. But in Bitcoin, you see the truth. It's as if you suddenly see clearly. Your wealth is shrinking while you think it's growing. And that's the moment when you realize that we're living in a bubble, and Bitcoin could be the way out. It gives you the chance to save your wealth in something real before the old system finally collapses. And now just imagine putting your financial life into a system that is truly a free market, a deflationary system. Prices drop to production costs because the economy becomes more efficient, because economies of scale take effect, because entrepreneurs are creative, and because there is competition. Because everything, absolutely everything, should be getting cheaper, not more expensive. Just think about it. In 1989, for example, a loaf of bread might have cost $1. Today it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Haven't we actually gotten much better at baking bread over time? But the world and people don't want to hear that. Why? Because they're stuck in an endless Ponzi scheme that we call fiat currency. People are happy when the price of their house, their real estate, goes up by 8%, and they don't realize they're part of a system that's slowly collapsing. And when you realize that Bitcoin is the first truly free market, it feels like a veil has been lifted from your eyes. You see, Bitcoin creates new rules for money that most people don't understand yet. But that's exactly when you start to align your life with it. The question is, why do so many people reject Bitcoin? First, it's a paradigm shift. Just imagine your money being in a deflationary system. Prices go down because the economy becomes more efficient, because companies are creative, because competition exists, because we know everything should actually become cheaper. But the fiat world, an endless Ponzi scheme, twists everything, and Bitcoin basically changes that. Prices fall in the long run, and that's the change you should be putting your energy into. Second, many people prefer to listen to other politicians and the news. Bitcoin is a bubble, a Ponzi scheme, harmful, and so on. These narratives stick because it's convenient not to think for yourself. And I used to be like that too. But if you learn this and realize that Bitcoin can be the solution, you can do it together with me. Just click the link in the description below the video. Watch the video, it's free, and only available for a short time. Trust me, with this process, let your knowledge grow, build up your Bitcoin holdings, and develop a mindset that will set you financially free. And that is the journey of a Bitcoiner. That's what it's really all about. Bitcoin is a decentralized, deflationary asset that makes you independent from central banks, while fiat money like the euro or the dollar loses value. And Bitcoin requires us to keep educating ourselves. And honestly, I can't think of anything more important than understanding this monetary system, which influences our lives in every possible way. Just think about it. Everything we do depends on how we generate income, how we build financial security, and how we create freedom. And if you look at your daily habits, you'll quickly notice how much they revolve around surviving and thriving. That also means earning money. And we need to move away from a system that is corrupt, based on debt, and collapsing. Instead, we need a system that is based on truth, integrity, and trust, something we can verify. Klaus Schwab's vision from the beginning, the Great Reset, that we will own nothing and be happy, leads us into a world where central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, dominate, a system of dependency and control, by centralized institutions run by unelected individuals. And that only reinforces the whole thing. But there is an alternative, namely Bitcoin. As a decentralized network, Bitcoin gives you the opportunity to escape this dependency. With Bitcoin, you retain control over your money without being dependent on governments, politicians, or bankers. While Klaus Schwab's plan aims for centralized power, Bitcoin gives you the freedom to take your financial destiny into your own hands, and change is coming. But you decide, dependence in a CBDC world or independence through Bitcoin. The answer is clearly up to you. Take action.